Who are you talking about? Are you talking about
This
GLaDOS?
is where Sterling and Conley
You want to
finally
bring
meet
back
for the first
GLaDOS.
time. It is a difficult moment to get right. We want to keep it short, but still deliver all the exposition and
that
character
is
interaction
why you
we
gotta
needed.
switch your
They need to
capacitors.
exchange their broad goals and alignments.
So that's the sort
Realistically,
of guys
these
you
characters
normally
would
hang out
never shut
with.
up. They would
Did
keep
you
arguing for
work with
ages, and we
him?
could not come up with a natural way to end the conversation. In a movie, one character could just say, "Screw you, I'm leaving." But here something has to change in the environment to unblock the player. We thought of a few ways, but in the end just made the computer explode. It's random and ridiculous, but it also makes it kind of funny. We thought we could save time by reusing this vista, but it actually became a nightmare. We could have shared geometry using instances, but they don't allow us to make any changes in each map. We needed to make some changes, so we had to just decide when this vista was finished, so we could then copy-paste all the geometry to make the nighttime version. We then also made this vista the background map for Act 4, and built a post-game variant with a sunset. This means that the geometry had to be replicated in 4 maps. If any changes were made, they had to be added to all 4 maps. We still liked the effect of revisiting the same area, now with a different context. So it was worth it, but definitely not a time saver.
Oh, I shouldn't have looked. We put someone in charge of the
These new cubes are a cut element from Portal 2 that was originally intended to ship with the Puzzle Maker DLC. After receiving the source code for Portal 2, we found this fully implemented but inaccessible cube variant called the Schrödinger's cube. We don't know why Valve never shipped it, and through testing, found it to be a fascinating element. A pair of linked cubes. Laser enters one, comes out the other. One gets fizzled, both get fizzled. One gets painted, both get painted. 2 individual objects acting as one. It's a concept that we haven't really seen before in Portal, so we were excited to include it in Portal Revolution. But because Valve never finished this element, we had to design its visual and sound design from scratch.
I also did the sound effect work on the quantum cubes. I made it sound like they're almost alive or powered by some sort of cosmic thing. I believe one of them even has like this white noise phasing in and out, which gives off this breathing effect.
The blue particle effects seen on the cube are inspired by high-powered electric arcs. Their fast flickering and erratic movement show that this cube uses some dangerous energetic tech that you shouldn't mess with. The ring arcs all center around some form of singularity to convey that the cube behaves like a portal sucking in the laser. Perhaps this is the same tech used on the portal gun? The look was also a result of some technical limitations. The particles spawned from a particle system don't move if the cube moves, so all particles spawned from this cube need a very short lifespan, else they would leave a trail behind the cube. This could be a cool effect, but not what we wanted. You can still see the particles lag a bit behind the cube as you move it, but it's subtle enough and we think it adds to the effect.
For what little music there is in this chapter, I stuck with the idea of it sounding defeated. For this specific track, I wanted it to convey the feeling of some impending confrontation as you march your way to the spire.
This chamber is another case where adding a hole saved the day. Earlier versions of this puzzle featured an unintended solution that was surprisingly hard to get rid of. After some trial and error, adding a little pit here to the laser catcher solved the issue completely.
For this track, I wanted to convey Sterling and Kate's feelings of apprehension during this moment. And the title of it, Familiarity, is based on a line of dialogue from Sterling at the beginning of the next chamber, where he says he recognizes Conley's voice.
Who is she? The voice seems familiar.
Nighttime Overgrown was really difficult to build. Realistically, it should be much darker, but we didn't want to rely on artificial lights, so we went into a more fantastical direction with the lighting. It's more important to look pleasing than to be entirely realistic. We also reused a bunch of after-hours tricks to improve the visibility for gameplay. One of our biggest regrets is that we didn't build more Schrödinger's cube puzzles. It feels like you only just got introduced to them and then the game is over. Players say the same thing. We still like the puzzles we build and think it's better when players yearn for more than to be exhausted by excessive length. But I still hope to revisit this mechanic someday.
If we can then go into the control room and cut power.
The final
from the
puzzle.
core.
We wanted a
have
final
real
test chamber of
chance
the mod to bring
preventing
together all the
catastrophic
custom chamber elements of the game. Schrödinger's cubes, vacuum tubes, and cleansing fields. Putting them all into one chamber wasn't easy. Vacuum tubes interact with gels, but gel and cube interactions are one of the hardest to design for. Blue gel can disable cubes from sitting still on surfaces, but the constant bounciness is difficult to rectify. We don't want cubes to accidentally bounce into the vacuum tube. Cleansing fields could interact with that nicely. However, we didn't want this puzzle to be centered around gels, so we ended up not leaning into the cube painting mechanic as a required part of the test. Vacuum tubes are huge and bulky. Originally, this tube bent only 90 degrees in an L shape, which made the chamber a giant square with all elements stuffed into one corner. Giant square rooms don't play well with lasers either, since everything is accessible from everywhere. Weirdly shaped rooms with many nooks and crannies usually work better for lasers. After some fiddling, we just bent the tube 90 degrees further and landed at this design where the room is divided in two.